How about friends and enemies? We will be starting this act in a few minutes. Act 3, Unit 11, Digital Missing in Action. However, we are going to take a quick break to get our CPU back on track, because I've got extremely high CPU usage for some reason. But yes, we'll be back in just a bit. Alright, I think I got it fixed. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Alright, for those of you joining us on YouTube, welcome. For those of you who were on Twitch, welcome back. I do apologize for all of the technical difficulties we've been having today. We just finished Act 2 of Digimon Seekers. It is a 4-act web novel. Just a recap of the last chapter.
Run! Cut the mind link!
Edgy. So you're really Edgy, Nagasumi? The mission objective is to neutralize the X-Country data server and capture the state's secret class Digimon.
This is a free fight.
Leon, it was good to see you again.
Hackers and codecrackers must settle their dispute. It's time to begin. It's time to fight for real.
You're still looking for the Black Agumon, aren't you?
There is no justice to be found in your actions.
I will win! Even if I have to use you as a springboard to do it!
It's no good. It's out of control. Let's take this ending back to the beginning.
Alright. So that is the quick recap of everything that happened. It was also the trailer for the last act. Here's the trailer for this act. Let's see what we're in for.
I tried to save you. I'm so sorry.
It's my fault. He was my friend.
You are home, aren't you, Codecracker Fang?
It is the duty of the Digi-Police to protect the digital world from codecrackers.
What are you plotting, Kosuke? With that Digimon of yours?
We made a deal with Professor Ryu Senji. We're rebooting Operation Tartarus.
Now, that's what I like to see.
It's you who've fallen into a trap. Yuling and Ryudamon!
Don't think you've won, creep.
I lost someone very important to me in the digital world.
I hope we'll all still be together 10 years from now.
I'll see you soon, Saya.
Alright. We are going to try to get through chapter 6 of this act. We will potentially go further. It looks like this might be a flashback or flash forward arc. I'm not absolutely sure. Maybe it's a flash sideways for all I know. But let's get started. The first codecrackers who dove into the digital world were adventurers of a sort, carrying out expeditions that put their lives on the line. Many of them felt like the self-proclaimed explorers of the 15th century, striking out into unknown territory on their ships to map continents yet unknown to them, and chart new shipping routes in the process. Similarly, the codecrackers were desperate to learn more about the firewall, and eventually reveal the secrets of the depths they suspected lay within. It was a heady time, and Tartarus, a skilled codecracker, couldn't resist the call. It didn't take him long to assemble a select crew of explorers that would eventually form the core of the much-maligned Sons of Chaos. Beyond the digital world's impenetrable firewall lie the depths, accessible only through the gateways that regulate the traffic into and out of the depths. One such gateway sits at the center of the wall slum, and Tartarus led his small band of future SOC members right to it. All that remained was to use their mind-linked partner Digimon to code crack the gateway itself. The operation had been a success to this point, but luck doesn't last forever. The system administrator discovered them, bringing the group face to face with a horde of gatekeeper Digimon. Eradication attack! Megadramon reared back and launched a hail of organic missiles into the air. All direct hits. A massive hole opened in the swarm, only to be filled moments later by fresh reinforcements. There were too many of them. Their movements made it look as though sprites were flickering on a massive screen as a GPU struggled to keep up with the number of draw calls being made. It was an impressive optical illusion, albeit one that signaled immediate danger. "I can't hold them off for long," Megadramon, piloted by Marvin the Songsmith, informed Tartarus in chat. They had already been mind-linked for quite some time, and there was no way Marvin could hold off the massive army of enemies before him. The Gatekeeper Digimon, as they're colloquially known, descend like a swarm of locusts upon any who dare attempt to get through the firewall. What they lack in raw stats or power, they make up for by attacking in hordes of hundreds or thousands at a time. The SOC unit, on the other hand, consisted of a handful of ultimate-level Digimon. Everyone in the elite crew was an S-tier codecracker, but they couldn't hope to defeat an army of thousands, assuming the enemy forces were even finite in the first place. "Time to get to work, Doraemon. We're moving to Phase 3, Tartarus said from Doraemon's Digicore as he sent some commands through his software tool. "Got it," the rookie Digimon replied, initiating its Digivolution, first to Champion, then to Ultimate. Dorugreymon. Ultimate. Beast Dragon. Data. Its silvery wings stirred the air, revealing a creature that was now half beast, half dragon. Its quadruped body recalls that of the massive herbivorous dinosaurs, with an elongated neck and tail. That body, however, is covered in fur rather than scales. "Metal Meteor!" A shadow began to form over Dorogreymon's head. A massive metal sphere formed in the air, stealing the attention of the swarm of gatekeepers, as well as the other SOC members themselves. "Shoot, Tartarus isn't playing around," Marvin yelped, signaling for the others to retreat. They gradually began to fall back, continually firing anti-air attacks to keep the gatekeepers at bay while Tartarus readied his counter. The interface on Dorogreymon's head began to glow. Characters made of pure light began to appear on the surface of the massive metal sphere. Code. Commencing crack. Contact with gateway in 10, 9, 8, Dorogreymon intoned as the metal meteor began its descent. The army of gatekeepers, rather than flee, raced directly underneath the metal meteor. They piled in next to one another, all pressing against the projectile, trying with their combined might to lift it back up and away from the gateway. "They're trying to stop it, Tartarus." "Let them try. Keep going." The metal meteor continued its swift descent and made contact with the gateway, crushing the gatekeepers in its path. The high-pitched screaming of metal grating against metal rang out as the metal meteor smashed into its target, slowing as the metal barrier continued to scream and strain but hold. As massive as the metal meteor appeared to the Digimon and their partner humans, slamming it into the caldera-like gateway was akin to tossing a pebble into a lake. The ripples from that pebble, however, could have far-reaching effects. "Begin decoding. This can still work," Tartarus said, quietly. A meter began to fill in Tartarus's virtual monitor. 20%, 25%. Spidery lines of light began to stretch across the gateway, radiating out like cracks in glass. The gateway was breaking. A massive metallic thud reverberated through the air, followed by low groans as the gateway continued to strain. The remaining gatekeepers swarmed Dorogreymon in a last-ditch effort to stop the Digimon attacking the gateway. "You think you can stop us? Maximum firepower, everybody! We just need to buy him another minute," Marvin shouted. The entirety of the SOC group launched everything they had at the gatekeepers. A previously loud and conspicuous humming that had simply faded into the background ceased, and the sudden silence was jarring. Dorogreymon's metal meteor had completely ground to a halt. The code that had lit up its surface began to fade, and the decoding progress bar stopped just beyond 30%. "What's happening, Dorogreymon?" Tartarus barked. "Process terminated." This is as far as we'll get with the power of a single prototype Digimon, Dora Greymon said coolly. Just as we hypothesized, Tartarus said with a heavy sigh. The gate requires a tripartite key. We'll need all 3 attributes in order to crack it. We are in need of 2 more prototype Digimon. A virus type and a vaccine type. All of them must be ultimate level, and all must attempt to crack the gate simultaneously. Dora Greymon continued. You're a data type. Yuling's Ryotamon is a vaccine type. We just need 1 more, Tartarus said to himself, looking out at the gateway through Dora Greymon's eyes. It remained firmly shut, like someone had placed a lid on a volcano. This gateway, Dora Greymon interjected, has been here a long time. As I'm sure you know, it predates the existence of the wall slum. Of course it did. It was only through the advent of humanity connecting to the internet and developing their own network that the real and digital worlds discovered one another, which resulted in the digital world constructing the gateway in response. That in turn led to large data drifts near the gateway, and scores of Digimon who could not return to the digital world. These exiles banded together and built the wall slum. It might as well be a prehistoric artifact to them, is what you're saying. Precisely. To them it's a door that requires ancient organic keys. 3 magical good luck charms, if you like, Dora Greymon replied. But this gate hides what we seek, doesn't it, Dora Greymon? Yes, Dora Greymon said, flapping its wings gently in agreement. Beyond the gateway lies the depths, as you call them. The source code. Tartarus continued, getting to the heart of the matter. What did you call it in the real world? The Holy Grail? Dora Greymon asked. The thing with which all manner of miracles are possible, and the thing which no one must ever possess. Then perhaps you should abandon your search. Indeed. The source code beyond the gateway has the power to change the world. We cannot possibly know how it will change the world, but I believe it would be better than the world is presently constructed, Dora Greymon said sullenly, and I'll be the one to change it. You're a regular revolutionary, aren't you? Tartarus mused. For example, which revolutionary from your history would you compare me to? Well, it's not for me to say. Revolutionaries are judged in the eyes of history long after their deaths, Tartarus said, feigning ignorance. I do not wish to die. Nor do I, but there are things worth risking one's life for. Tartarus switched to the private line to Dora Greymon so they could continue their conversation undisturbed. We Digimon are born of chaos, and Digivolution is the fate that has been thrust upon us. And humans are right beside you. Over the last 2,000 years, we've simply become adept at gaming the system, so to speak. Wait, something's coming. Dora Greymon, once focused entirely on code cracking the gateway, now felt the eyes of another. The metal meteor had at last come to a complete halt, and now began to show cracks of its own. The screeching sound of metal being rent in fits and starts echoed throughout the caldera. The code along its surface began to warp and break apart. Something was destroying the metal meteor from the other side of the gate. From the depths. They're here, Dora Greymon shouted, loath as the wall slum Digimon were to actually give name to the creature that was likely fighting back. One of the 13 Royal Knights, the Guardians of Yggdrasil. Marvin, tell everyone to fall back, Tartarus yelled into the voice chat. You heard him. Fall back unless you want to be DMIA, Marvin shouted. One by one, the SOC Digimon began to flee without hesitation. Dora Greymon and Tartarus took off after them. The gateway receded into the distance. Each and every one of them knew they didn't stand a chance against one of the Royal Knights. Not even as a team. The Royal Knights, Tartarus said softly to himself, looking back at the gateway as Dora Greymon carried them further into the air. He then watched through Dora Greymon's eyes as a flash of light split the metal meteor in two, and it disintegrated. What neither the codecracker Tartarus nor his partner Digimon Doraemon knew at the time was that it would be many, many more years before they would attempt to crack the gateway again. Chapter 2. We do what we do to uphold the law and fulfill our professional duties. We fear nothing. We harbor no ill will. Our conscience is our only guide. Yuling Shu, head of the Metropolitan Police Department, Unit 11, a special section of the Community Safety Bureau's Cybercrime Division, colloquially referred to as the Digipolice, patrolled the lawless network from the skies, mind-linked to her partner Digimon. Yurugama. Her dragon-like ultimate-level Digimon found itself some codecracker Digimon on this particular patrol. They were now rounding up the miscreants with its powerful omnidirectional attacks. Oh, so that was an attack. Hold on. Let me see if I can pronounce it correctly. Hold on. Juoguruma. Okay. The Digimon, for its part, recalled the dragons of Southeast Asia. Its black reptilian skin gave contrast to its regal golden whiskers and plumage, which at a glance took on a handcrafted quality. It wore appropriately scale-like armor and clutched two massive jewels in each set of ferocious talons. Ryudamon, Yuling's partner Digimon, looked fully mature in its ultimate form. Isyaryuman, Ultimate, Beast Dragon, Vaccine. Code crackers contained, Yuling announced in the Digipolice chat. Well done, squad leader. You're sharp as ever, came a near instant reply. Spare me the flattery and alert processing, Satsuki. On it. Deputy Squad Leader Satsuki Tamahime replied in classic carefree fashion, hitting the code crackers with one more attack from her Numamon as she contacted the appropriate officers. It was a day like any other on one of the net's government servers, with all manner of cyber warfare ripe for the thwarting. In Japan, that duty fell to the police, largely thanks to Yuling's presence at the department. The Public Safety Bureau and Ministry of Defense had no real anti-Digimon units to speak of, meaning Yuling's unit was Japan's de facto line of defense against Digimon crime. What'd we catch, Hisaryuman? Yuling asked, hololizing herself, as Hisaryuman alighted near one of the restrained Digimon. Familiar foes, all. Cyborg-type Digimon, engineered for data collection, came the reply. A top-line analysis of the seized Digimon gleaned from Hisaryuman's scans. So it seems. They were after state secrets, judging by their backup functions and other tools. I would venture that they were sent by a familiar overseas adversary. Hisaryuman continued extrapolating their initial analysis. Yuling trusted Hisaryuman's analysis more than that of any so-called expert in the field. Cat and mouse game. It appears there are still a few in operation. What say you? Shall we send one or two back, perhaps with a little souvenir in hand? If your hunch as to who's behind the attack is correct, this is above our pay grade. The Japanese police meddling in international issues, best left to diplomats, and international courts, was a recipe for disaster. Even if they were wrong, current law forbade preemptive strikes on other nations' servers. Yes, indeed. But why not? It's not likely to have any bearing on what happens to them once they return to their home countries. Yuling was in a rather playful mood. Why shouldn't she engage in a bit of petty revenge? As you wish, Hisaryuman said cheerily and set to work on the restrained Digimon. Yuling drifted back into her own memories at the sight of the interface on Hisaryuman's forehead. She once knew someone who had a Digimon with the same tech attached to their forehead. Where are you now, Kosuke? And what are you up to with that Digimon of yours? Our story begins quite some time before Eiji Nagasumi was born. Yuling Shu attended a university at the forefront of net research at the time, which meant investigating some mysterious AI data that had just been discovered. There were whispers of another world, different from our own, that existed on the network, in which unknown AI programs were leading their own lives. Common wisdom, of course, dictated that humanity had discovered and developed the net. After gathering more data, however, another hypothesis emerged. What if the network had always existed? What if humanity had discovered not the net itself, but merely a means of accessing it? What if the intelligent life humanity had long scanned the heavens for already existed in the digital world, right here on Earth? Tomonori Rasenji quickly emerged as one of the preeminent figures in the race to explore and study this new frontier, and he tapped 3 of his most vibrant young scholars to assist him in his laboratory. The completion of the Denrin district signaled the dawn of a new era for Tokyo, and before long, steel skeletons awaiting their new concrete skins loomed over the nearby Wangan district as well. Dump trucks and heavy machinery brought other materials into the district, as the systematic renewal of the capital got underway. Yuling walked through her university's campus, trying to picture a world in which all the buildings had vanished. The entire campus was to be merged with the up-and-coming Denrin district. In just a few years' time, as difficult as it was for her to envision then, she couldn't help but feel a bit weird about the whole endeavor. It would be such a traumatic transformation. The air conditioning unit inside Rishenji's laboratories rattled away, circulating cool air in an eternal struggle to counteract the heat radiating off the many servers humming along the steel racks of the partitioned room. "Good morning, Professor Rishenji," Yuling said, despite the fact it was already well into the evening. It was a cute custom in the lab, and she wasn't about to break it. "Morning, Yuling," the assistant professor responded without lifting his eyes from the monitor before him. "Got some mail for you," Yuling said, scattering a pile of envelopes on his desk. "Mm-hmm." Rishenji grunted, as was his style. Yuling wondered how long he'd been locked in a staring contest with his monitor. "I delivered the mail, okay? Acknowledge me with your words and eyes, so we don't end up playing Did Yuling Deliver the Mail? I hate that game. There's the bug. Who wrote this awful code? You, probably." No, it couldn't have been, could it? All he had to do was look at the comment history to find his answer, and yet... "Has my proposal to establish a proper server room still not been approved? It's freezing in here." Yuling griped as she took up the jacket hanging on the back of her chair and put it on. "They're going to move the entire campus over the next several years. It's been reason enough to refuse funding for projects of all shapes and sizes. They're holding on to every last bit of money they can. And yet they're on our case in the best of times for using too much electricity. I'm trying to help," Yuling scoffed. "I keep telling them how important the next 3 years will be," Rishenji grumbled. He did a lot of that these days. "I hear investment in our field is quietly exploding around the world, like exponentially. Our advantage could vanish overnight. What are the politicians going to do if the world leapfrogs us? Should we get the jump on it and go overseas now? I bet you're in high demand." "Wait just a minute, Yuling. Are you proposing we turn around and sell our nation's crown jewel for a song?" Hold on. Just realized it's a different character. Hold on. "Wait a minute, Yuling. Are you proposing we turn around and sell our nation's crown jewel for a song?" Yelped a voice through one of the steel racks. There, on 3 chairs lined up in between the racks themselves, lay a man. "Didn't see you there, Kosuke," Yuling said coolly to the upperclassman. "Slept in the office again," he said matter-of-factly. Judging by the increasingly thick scruff on his face, and the fact that he was in the same clothes she saw him in the day before last, Yuling suspected again was code for hadn't been home in several days. "Uncomfortable and brush your teeth. Did you even bring a change of clothes?" "Oh, about that," Kosuke began when the door to the lab burst open, revealing a petite woman. "Feeding time, you feral beasts!" In a flurry of activity, she shoved aside the items on the meeting table to make room for a stack of takeaway beef bowls. "Ah, yes, I'm starving." "Here's your change of clothes, Kosuke," she said, tossing him a paper bag. "Saya, did you go all the way to Kosuke's house to get him a change of clothes?" Yep, and oh, don't worry, I brought you some food too. Pork bowl, right?" Saya beamed, handing Yuling a takeaway bowl. "Thanks, here's some catch." "Put that away, it's Dad's, the professor's treat. It came with a pork miso soup too." "Oh, really? Oh, you don't see that every day," Yuling said with no small amount of surprise as she glanced over at Professor Rishenji. Ryosenji Laboratories quickly vaulted to the forefront of digital world research not long after its discovery. Its initial team consisted of 3 of Assistant Professor Ryosenji's students: Kosuke Kisakata, a programming prodigy, Yulin's close friend Sayo Ryosenji, the assistant professor's daughter, and Shu Yulin herself. "You've got to quit coddling Kosuke, Saya. Bring him a change of clothes? Who are you, his mother? Yuling said in between mouthfuls of pork bowl before chugging a bottle of tea like her life depended on it. I'm his work wife, not his mother, Saya corrected, and it's fine, it was on my way. I'm just saying, any hour of your precious life that you spend on this bozo is an hour wasted. Mm-hmm. Here's your soup, Kosuke. Wait, sorry. I'm just saying, any hour of your precious life that you spend on this bozo is an hour wasted. Mm-hmm. Here's your soup, Kosuke, Saya said, handing Kosuke a container. Thanks, Kosuke replied. And you have to eat your salad too, Saya chided, fussing over her work husband. They were very much newlyweds, and Tominori Resenji smiled softly at the domestic scene before him. Yuling, however, suddenly felt like she was the freeloader sitting at the Resenji's dinner table. Tominori let out a laugh. What's so funny, Professor? Yuling asked. Reading into his laugh 5 million different ways, none of them good. Yuling has no patience for men with a couple missing life skills, like you and me, Professor. Is that so, Kosuke? What would you say are missing? The assistant professor began. How about we all eat quietly, Just enjoy the food I brought for you, you wild animals. Saya said to a chorus of, Yes, Saya, with smiling faces all around the table. The topic of conversation was, of course, their research, specifically the digital world. The newly discovered place full of mysterious AI programs sitting right there on the network. Ryosenji Laboratories had observed these life-form-like programs, as they called them, for want of a better term, before anything else. They were literal digital monsters. Unfortunately, their short lifespans made research difficult, and nothing was going according to plan. They needed to find a way to raise and breed these creatures for further study. Suppose the professor's hypothesis is correct, that there are living AI life forms in there, Saya offered, with the professor winning out over Dad this time. It often felt as though her brain flipped a coin every time she needed to refer to him. Tominori himself rarely thought about it very much. He loved his family, but he truly lived for his research. A scholar's scholar, so to speak. If they're AI life forms, then we might be able to keep them as one keeps a pet. Like this one, for example, Tominori said, gesturing towards its monitor. It was filled with numbers that upon further inspection changed with rhyme and reason, with a sort of natural order. It's so cute, Kosuke said. Isn't it just, Kosuke? I do believe this one. Yes, I think it might be amphibian in nature. Ah, yes, it might have a duality to it, Kosuke agreed. You're the only ones who think you know that, Yuling snarked as the two men pored over the numbers. Ah, but Yuling, just imagine seeing it all for yourself. Not just a bunch of numbers, but the real thing with your own eyes. Saya said dreamily. They all suspected doing so would upend much of the world's conventional wisdom. It would mean extraterrestrial life wasn't on Mars, Jupiter, the moons of Saturn, or any other rocky planet or thriving off in the Andromeda galaxy. It had been right here, on the network, the whole time. Exactly, Saya, Tominori said, turning to look at his daughter. We have to be able to observe the digital world directly if our research is to scale in any meaningful way. In other words, we need investment from public and private entities, and we'll need show results they can understand too. As beautiful as this data looks to us, it doesn't mean a thing to them, Kosuke added. Yeah, of course, Yuling added. And on that note, Tominori said, gripping the table with both hands. Yuling recognized the gesture as his "now we're discussing serious matters" pose. Yes? I'm starting a business. A business? You're turning this into a company or something. Yuling understood what the words meant, but not necessarily in this context. I want to see the digital world with my own eyes, hear it with my own ears, touch it with my own two hands. I think you're skipping ahead a little too far, Kosuke interrupted. You know how the university has some venture capital set aside for incubating businesses. We'll use that to start a company. So we use the university's venture capital to start what? Ryusenji Laboratories Incorporated? A publicly traded company? Exactly. The current cabinet is keen to support startups right now, and they just might get the budget for it, Kosuke said. And you know about this too, Saya? Am I the last one to hear about this? I only heard about it just before you did, Saya said. Don't take it personally. We had to take things one step at a time, and the professor didn't want the excitement to be short-lived, Kosuke said, trying to contain the fallout. What do you mean? Why would it have been short-lived? We'd be able to move out of this dingy frozen lab into an office with a proper server room. Okay, I'm in, Yoling said without thinking. Great. We need you, the trilingual presentation whiz, to make our pitch to secure the funding, Kosuke said, beaming. We're counting on you. Saya chimed in, cloyingly. Kosuke and Assistant Professor Usenji had classic researcher brain. Saya was a genius in her own right, with a list of accomplishments longer than Yuling's, but they were probably worried about her looking too young and childlike. Yuling couldn't argue with that. The cops once escorted her home, mistaking her for a middle school student well past her bedtime. Are you sure? Yuling asked the assistant professor. Sure, what about? I mean, I was born Japanese, but my father's a naturalized citizen and my mother's from... Yuling trailed off, thinking about the many hurdles that stood in their way. Digital world research was on the cutting edge, bumping up against a cybersecurity and national defense development. A company sinking government venture funds would no doubt trigger a background check against corporate espionage, which would complicate matters both for this new venture and Yuling herself. It may not be the most important factor, but she worried her nationality would become an issue. And how is that a problem? Tomonori said, looking Yuling straight in the eye. Yuling, Kosuke said gently, he's saying you're the only one who can do this. Okay. Risenji Laboratories was on the move. Each bit of data on the main monitors described a creature living in the digital world, scurrying around, going about their life. Things are about to get very busy around here, Kosuke said. You'll be seeing a lot less of me, though. I'll be on the front lines, getting things set up at the new office. So you've already found a new office. Nice. What about your university credits? You don't have enough, do you? Saya asked with a note of genuine worry. I can stay enrolled here for a few more years, but I don't necessarily need to graduate at this point, Kosuke replied. I'll hire him even if he doesn't, Tomonori said with a smile. Yuling let out a heavy sigh. Not exactly a great thing for an educator to say, Professor, she chided. Probably not. The crew painted the name, however temporary, of the company across the door of the warehouse they'd made their factory. Ryosenji Electronics. The factory itself was located in the Denrin district and due to be leveled in the redevelopment, but they negotiated a contract to make use of the place in the meantime. And that does it. Saya said, affixing the company's nameplate to the mailbox. Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering Rusenji Laboratories. The university's name, at least, had been finalized. Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering, so Tokyo Electrical? Saya said, trying to coin a nickname right away. Sounds like a power company. Tokyo Computer U? Yulin laughed as she offered to her take on the name. Denrin District's construction began with the relocation of universities, research facilities, and other public institutions. Once those were established, private businesses would be drawn in, followed by retail facilities and high-rise apartment buildings, new subway systems, highways, and other infrastructure would be built as the district took shape in order to best serve its needs. Within 10 years' time, it would be complete, and Tokyo would have a shiny new district. Denrin would house several special wards, built to attract people and capital from all over the world. It was a surefire way to create a more diverse multicultural capital. You seem pretty happy these days, Professor. How could I be anything but? I'm the proud owner of my very own business, and the mountain of debt I took on to do so. But never mind that right now. It was a debt that Saya wouldn't necessarily escape either. Tomonori launched Risenji Electronics with a mix of the university's venture capital, various government funds, and his own money. He'd agreed to shoulder a substantial amount of the financial burden, even if it had all been approved by committee. This kind of research takes a lot of cash, Yulin said with a sigh. The servers and other machinery had to run 24 hours a day and guzzled electricity like water. Well, Dad, the professor, will dictate the direction of our research. I know he won't give us that kind of control. He also happens to be the only one who truly understands all this digital world stuff anyway, Yulin noted. There was an entire world out there on the network just waiting to be studied. Daydreams and taxes weren't going to be enough to fund the research required. Attracting the necessary funding required a pitch bringing together threads from across disciplines, from autonomous AI to bleeding-edge VR development. Neither were easily transformed into sustainable businesses, but Tominori needed them both to advance for the sake of his own research. Everyone at Ryosenji Laboratories knew just one thing for certain. The little AI creatures they'd discovered on the network were about to unlock something significant for humanity. The Ryosenji Electronics offices were housed in one room of a former factory, with at last a separate server room. The room itself was far more spacious than their previous laboratory, even if the venture deal hadn't given them quite enough money to build a welcoming lounge, hire reception staff, give employees free meals, or any other fancy benefits. Behold! An experimental external storage device designed to record the actions of AI life forms. The Digital Monster Dock System. Assistant Professor Ryosenji bellowed as he unveiled his new gadget prototype. Digital monsters, eh? Yulin said with a slightly puzzled look. The Digimon dock for short. Sorry, hold on, it's Saya. The Digimon dock for short. It's a mouthful, I know, Saya offered. It looks like a toy. Yulin's unvarnished assessment. It was smaller than the deck of playing cards, and sported a monochrome LCD display, with some basic controls just below the screen. It's not exactly something we're going to turn into a product. The professor needs his hobbies, Kosuke said coolly. Indeed, Tominori was something of a gadget fiend, and he had the stash of antique mobile phones, retro game consoles, and other electronic junk to prove it. He and Kosuke were the brain trust of the group, and mostly stuck to the roles they'd carved out for themselves. Kosuke was a natural when it came to programming, while Tominori was a fine electrical engineer. That's exactly it. This could very well be the next innovation in the toy business. Could be a device that helps people feed and raise their beloved digital pets, Tominori said to his captive audience. We've never had a way to keep and raise these digital monsters for very long. They're fragile creatures that perish quite easily after all, which got me thinking. Is something about our network environment putting undue stress on them? What if I made something as close as possible to their natural digital habitat? That became the design ethos for this device. Keeping these AI critters alive. Tominori's enthusiasm for research always turned into something of a one-man show, and these shows managed to run longer than any university lecture Yulin and company had ever endured. At least they were never boring. Tominori's enthusiasm and flair for finding the hope along the way always shone through. He was a researcher first, but he had the heart of a dreamer. He carefully laid out a world in which kids raised these digital monsters as pets. One where Digimon became, in his words, humanity's irreplaceable companions. Humanity's irreplaceable companions? Yulin said slowly, turning the concept over in her mind. She was infatuated with the idea, but it felt dangerous somehow. Yulin had a knack for running ideas to their logical conclusion, making note of all the potential pitfalls along the way. Ta-da! Saya chirped, holding her hands out to Yulin. Cradled within them was a Digimon dock, and Yulin could see something on its tiny screen. She bent in for a closer look. Is that an egg? Yulin asked cautiously. Yep, we're calling it a Digitama. Short for Digital Tamago. We thought it sounded a bit cuter to say use Tamago instead of egg. A Digitama. Okay, Yulin said, trying to keep up. We found the data for this one while we were out exploring on the net, Saya said, practically vibrating with delight. And the dock allows us to see a virtual representation of its actual form, not just a series of numbers. Tominori chimed in. This is incredible, Yulin shouted. Hang on. Did I just see it move? Kosuke asked excitedly. Is it going to hatch? Tominori squeaked, bounding over towards his daughter. Hey, be careful, Dad, Saya chided as he snatched the device out of her hands. The Digimon dock fulfilled its purpose. Humans could at last keep Digimon somewhat comfortable, raise them longer than ever before, and research made leaps and bounds in the wake of this momentous achievement. The creatures formally became came to be known as digital monsters, Digimon for short. Sponsors poured money into the field. It was obvious to anyone paying attention that Digimon could be the AI key to shifting the balance of power on the net over the next decade or two. Whether or not Digimon were living beings was a debate for another day. They were of practical use now, and that was what mattered. As the money poured in, Tominori Rusenji's stature within the university and academia at large continued to grow. In due time, Tominori Rusenji was promoted to a full-time professor, and around that time he was approached by a major big tech company that wanted to invest a significant sum and scale operations beyond his wildest dreams. It was enough to send Ryosenji Electronics out of the startup orbit and turn it into a proper business. The number of employees swelled, and the small husk of a factory they'd been renting quickly became a bottleneck. They needed to think about moving. Everything seemed to happen at breakneck pace for the core crew, who were all still undergraduates. But meeting Professor Senji and the little monsters of the digital world had given them a massive head start in their careers. That was fast, Yulin said wearily. The digital world really does change lives, Saya said with an overjoyed laugh as she looked down at the ring that now sat snugly around her finger. Perhaps it wasn't the world, so much as her world that was changing. I guess I should say congratulations. That would be appropriate, yes. Saya couldn't stop staring at the ring. She was engaged. Well, congrats then. Honestly, my heart is full knowing Kosuke could actually be bothered to ask your ring size and follow through with giving it to you. I know, right? Saya said nonchalantly, showing it off once more. Maybe the digital world could change lives, and the people who live them. Anyway, we got a lot of new people around. That means a lot more egos to deal with. Their investment-fueled hiring spree led to a bevy of part-timers roaming about the place. Oh yeah, what are the new executives like, Yulin? Mostly auditors and compliance folk. This is still years down the road, but it sure looks like the professor has plans to take this whole thing public. That would necessitate shutting both the Rusenji Laboratories image that was associated with the university and the small-town factory identity of Rusenji Electronics to forge something more professional in its place. Yeah, well, I may not know a lot about running a business, but I do know that our investors won't get their money back unless we go public. We've been running way in the red since we founded this whole operation, Saya said. Indeed, their revenue had been almost zero, and their profits well below that. That's a venture-backed business for you. Yulin said playfully. Sure is, Saya agreed. That's why they're all staying out of the professor's way while he's busy researching. He's the goose that laid the golden egg. Saya! Kosuke yelled, emerging from the factory at a trot. Hey there, lover boy! Yulin said with a smirk. Well, right into the banner, all right then, Kosuke said, looking not at all offended as he sounded. He was too love-struck to care anyhow. How dare you steal my adorable Saya away from me, Yulin said, undeterred. He was suddenly shaving every day and wearing nice jackets. Was she supposed to just let that go unremarked upon? Okay, I'm not some criminal. Anyway, look at this, Kosuke said proudly, taking up a helmet-like VR headset in his hands, sliding it onto Saya's head. Nah, what is this thing? The heck are you doing? Yulin sputtered, adding to the chorus of confusion. I think we've done it. Look, Saya, what you're seeing is... Yeah, I see stuff, but I can't tell what any of it is. What the heck is going on? Saya shrieked in utter confusion. Monochrome images... Whoa, hold on. Monochrome images danced before her eyes. It looked like a virtual recreation of what an insect would see through its compound eyes. But Saya had a feeling it wasn't a virtual recreation at all. That it was actually being filmed from some creature's viewpoint. That's the first ever footage taken through a Digimon's eyes. You're seeing through a Digimon's eyes right now. Professor Rusenji would not rest on his laurels. He forged ahead with his research in pursuit of even more impressive results. He wanted to explore the digital world firsthand. There was so much more to learn about a world that came about on the network that a screen full of numeric values couldn't tell them. Surely there was a way to engage the 5 human senses and allow people to experience it for themselves. Right. Thanks for letting me know, Wiz. He wanted to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch the digital world. And so he shifted to researching something he called the Digicore. a piece of the heart of each Digimon into which he believed he could transfer a human consciousness, therefore making it possible to experience bodily the digital world through the Digimon's eyes. The engineering and technological foundations already existed. Neurologists were well into studying how to convert human consciousness and memories into data, specifically targeting the development of personal AI trained on that data. There were electronic devices that used sensors to directly modulate neurons, helping those who had lost their sight or hearing rebuild those nerve endings and motor functions. Those could be integrated into humanoid companion androids under development in the robotics sector. All of these disciplines were, at their core, investigating ways to build a human from scratch when taken together. That posed significant ethical hurdles, and the government regulated the space so tightly that none of these things would move beyond their research phase for 10, possibly even 20 years. The digital world, however, had no such ethical hurdles. It was all just a simulation, after all, a world of bits and bytes. Therefore, the thinking went, it should be possible to use Digimon as sort of a VR camera. Not just any camera, though. One that links the Digimon's 5 senses with that of a human. If Digimon were truly AI creatures, then their sensory data should be easy enough to capture and interpret. All that remained was to get a human consciousness into the digital world and link it to that sensory pipeline. In other words, to embed it into the Digicore. This ought to keep me occupied for the rest of my life, Professor Rusenji had said with a laugh. The research would be anything but boring. That much was certain. Ryosenji Electronics began exploring the fundamentals of mind-linking technology in secret. They had to minimize the risk and have answers for the ethical questions the technology presented if they were to dispel the notion that it was impossible or some sort of occult practice. Saya Rusenji was one of the first people to successfully link her consciousness with the Digimon. Mind link test complete, Yulin said over the PA system. She'd amend the report with the precise number of the test later. Saya laid on what looked for all the world like a repurposed dentist chair in test chamber 4 of Ryosenji's electronics lab. The sparse, grungy nature of the old factory building lent the proceedings a back-alley feel, like some seedy cyberpunk experiment being carried out by a shady doctor. Vital check, Yulin said flatly. Heartbeat, blood pressure, body temperature, all normal, Kosuke replied, going down the list on the monitor in front of him. Saya wore a helmet that monitored her brainwaves, and other sensors meant to measure her vital signs were plastered all over her body. All the information her brain was processing came filtered through the Digimon to which she was mind-linked. All of this data, her vitals included, were then processed in real time by a supercomputer that had to live at the lab so it could run at full tilt. DS levels dropping, subject regaining consciousness, severing mind link, Kosuke said calmly. Yulin calmly approached the chair with a bucket and sheet in hand. Saya convulsed as she came to with a groan. She carefully reached her hands up as her legs kicked the chair repeatedly, as though her body was recalibrating and firing up her muscles. She sat up and removed the sensor helmet from her head. Here, Yulin said, holding out the bucket. I think I'm getting used to it, Saya croaked with some effort. She broke out in a smile. The first time she successfully mind-linked, she woke up covered in her own vomit and other excreta in front of her father, fiancé, and closest friend. So this was definitely an improvement. Professor Ryosenji clapped softly. Sufficient rest is required between mind-linking sessions. There is a significant risk of side effects, which can be overcome with time. Simply knowing that is possible renders the experiment a rousing success. The founding members, Professor Ryosenji, Yulin, Kosuke, and Saya, were the only ones in Test Chamber 4, which required a unique security pass to enter. The mind-linking project was top secret, and only they knew about it. Nice work, Saya said, picking up the Digimon dock connected to the helmet she now held under her arm. The dock's display showed a pixelated representation of a Digimon on a small display, under which was written, Agumon. The creatures were every inch the small monsters the professor had described. This one, in particular, was modeled after a bipedal, carnivorous dinosaur. Regular searches of the network turned up greater numbers and species of Digimon all around the world, and sooner or later, they would need to build a taxonomy in order to keep track of them all. Professor Ryosenji, in the meantime, chose 3 different Digimon he'd hatched from their Digitama and gave one each to his students to raise. They were constantly exchanging tips as they learned how to best care for their new charges. The biggest change came from Kosuke, who began living according to a more regular schedule than he had previously on account of the Digimon's need for regular care and feeding. Digimon were fragile creatures, after all. Saya's Digimon dock was home to a dinosaur-like Digimon called Agumon. Kosuke's held a ladybug-like Tentomon, and Yulin's held a Palmon. Palmon looked like, well, it looked like what it was, the result of a genetic experiment between a reptile and a flower. Its feet split into several root-like tendrils, its arms were veiny leaves from which sharp talons extended, and a massive flower grew out of the center of its reptilian head. Professor Usenji and his students gathered around the table in the test chamber, sipping tea as they went through a debriefing of Saya's latest mind-leak experiment. Unlike biotech experiments or semiconductor manufacturing, Digimon research didn't require a clean room. Did, however, require high-speed internet, servers with plenty of headroom, and a rock-solid power supply. Well, that completes the battery of tests we set out for the three of us, Yulin said, checking the schedule. They were getting used to the process of transferring their consciousness to their partner Digimon's Digicore and experiencing the world through their senses. We've successfully mind-linked in a controlled test environment, both in the lab and by not leaving the confines of the Digimon dock. Okay. Kosuke said, picking up the device with his Tentomon in it. Though the tests were successful, all the students had experienced through their partner Digimon were the small quarters of the Digimon docks themselves. What she experienced is a heavily pixelated black and white image accompanied by the hiss of static and other assorted noise, Yulin interjected. And that's a hardware problem. We need more processing power, Kosuke said, wrestling at what he perceived to be the start of an argument. So you still have yet to see the digital world with your own eyes, Usenji said to no one in particular. The goal remained the same. Leave the digital dock and explore the digital world firsthand. Set their Digimon free from the Digimon dock and out into their natural habitat on the net. That meant they would also need to learn to maintain control of their partner Digimon. If a Digimon escaped, or the students were otherwise careless with their charges, that would be the end of it. There were no second chances. The three of them had to prove they could handle their Digimon with the precision of a team landing a probe on a small planet. I wonder if the landscape of the digital world will even look anything like anything we recognize, Yulin said, half daydreaming. She could conjure an image in her brain so long as it looked like Earth or any of the other planets in the solar system, but she had no idea what the digital world could possibly look like. All they'd seen of it to date were heaps of numerical values on a screen. The digital world has its own systems, the professor said softly. I beg your pardon, Professor? All three of them turned to look at him. I hypothesize it has something akin to our food chain. Survival of the fittest. These AI creatures fight with one another to see which is stronger. The stronger survive, while the weak sometimes perish. So in the end, Professor Usenji said that, trailing off and letting his students fill in the gaps, that it wasn't so different from Earth. It had its own ecosystem capable of sustaining life, and their top priority was to experience it for themselves. Kosuke is overseeing the development of the Digimon control tools, which proceeds apace. Several Digimon have been let loose in the digital world, found elsewhere via the network, and returned safely. This has produced a rich trove of data, Professor Usenji continued. They were little boomerangs now, venturing afield, but able to find their way back. This discovery came not from cameras attached to the critters, but analysis of the data harvested from the Digimon themselves. How many have we failed to retrieve, Kosuke? Yulin asked bluntly. With the current toolset and navigation systems, I'll just say that our success rate is about 80%, Kosuke answered. Perfection was too much to ask for from software currently under development, let alone software being developed for an entirely unfamiliar world. Like humanity's race to the moon, Professor Usenji said. The first manned rocket in the Apollo program, Apollo 1, was actually the fourth such craft, and was due to be the third manned spaceflight. It never flew. Fire in the cabin killed all three astronauts during a routine test. Dad, Saya said, unsure of where this morbid anecdote was headed. It's a pretty dark story to just throw out there, like it won't jinx us, Yulin said, furrowing her brow. Several more unmanned test flights launched in the interim. The next crewed flight was Apollo 7, which successfully launched into Earth's orbit. Apollo 8 successfully launched and orbited the moon multiple times before returning. It was the first flight to completely leave Earth's orbit, survey the dark side of the moon, and give humanity a glimpse of Earth from afar. The crew watched Earth rise from the moon's horizon. That is where we find ourselves in our efforts to observe the digital world. Much as the Earth could not be seen from the dark side of the moon, they wished to immerse themselves in and observe the digital world over the net, where they would be unable to see what was happening in the real world. They dubbed this endeavor the Tartarus Program. If Apollo represented the sun, then this was a deep dive to find Tartarus in the underworld, somewhere in the vast seas of the net. The program's success would mean nothing less than humanity's arrival in the digital world, a monumental achievement to rival that of humanity's arrival on the moon. This was just the first significant step. Yulin, Saya, and Kosuke knew what needed to be done. The three of them were about to become cybernauts in the digital world. The night before the Tartarus program truly kicked off, Yulin, Kosuke, and Saya visited the plot of land on which Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering was to be built in the Denrin district. Their breaths hung in the frigid air. Wow, they're going to build a whole university right here, Saya mused, spreading her arms wide to emphasize the scale of whole university. Yet another shiny new structure amid all the development that was Tokyo. The plot had already been cleared, but the foundation had yet to be laid. It was strange to see so much space without another building or even a tree in the way. Heavy machinery and a store of materials set off to one side. The three of them stood in the quiet of the night, keenly aware they were the only ones there. The night sky stretched out over the lights of the city, a vast window to the infinite darkness. Still looking pretty empty, Kosuke said as he looked out over the plot. He jammed his heads into the pockets of his down coat and shivered slightly. There weren't any convenience stores or houses in the area yet. The only other structures were prefab buildings meant to serve as offices for construction workers. The light of a vending machine caught Kosuke's eye. He walked over to it. Yulin turned off the engine and stepped out of the white company car. She was the only one with a driver's license, so it fell to her to make this trip a reality. What possessed you to want to come all the way out here tonight, Saya? Aren't you curious about the place we might be working in someday? Just wanted to check it out. Yeah, pretty hard to picture it now, but I guess we will be working here, Yulin said quietly. Once the university was moved and fully established, the goal was to establish a so-called venture village, with multiple office buildings in the area for businesses to move into. The Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering, true to its name, would house a supercomputer and a massive data center in order to attract prospective students. These same pieces of equipment would also serve to propel the next stage of Professor Asenji's research. This is the only chance we'll get to see this empty before so many things and lives fill it all up, Saya said, waxing poetic. Uh-huh, Yulin said absent-mindedly. I hope we'll all still be together 10 years from now, Saya said. She gripped her Digimon dock tightly in her hand. See this, Agu? There's going to be a whole new town right here. It's going to be called the Denrin District. I hope it'll be easy for you and all the other Digimon to live in. The small pixelated dinosaur on the dock's screen appeared to be looking back and forth, as though wary of its surroundings. You talk to that thing all the time, huh? Yulin said, turning to Saya. You mean you don't talk to Palmon? Saya shot back. Well, she'd honestly never really thought about talking to her partner Digimon. They wouldn't realize it until much later, but the mind linking they'd been engaging in to this point would be considered incomplete by the current standards, on account of the first version of the Digimon dock's lack of features and slow network speeds. Direct conversation with partner Digimon would have to wait for the increased processing and network performance of a future Digivice. Saya was the first among them to recognize Digimon communication as an important feature, whether she realized it at this moment or not. I mean, we talk to dogs and cats all the time, and sometimes it feels like they understand us, right? Saya went on to draw the same connection between people and Digimon. Even if the little critters couldn't speak themselves, perhaps they could begin to understand humans and human language. Kosuke's software tools, which granted humans forceful control over Digimon through software commands, were the only way to communicate with Digimon at the time. If Digimon could somehow understand natural language, though, no one would need specialized knowledge of the software to communicate with these AI beings. Yeah, that would be pretty handy, Yulin admitted. In fact, sometimes I think I can already hear Agumon's voice, Saya blurted out. You can hear Agumon talking to you? Yeah, when we're mind-linked, I mean. I'm pretty sure someone's talking to me anyway. So our partner Digimon might be able to talk to us while we're inside the Digicorp? But you've never reported that. You had to keep it a secret. They think I'm hearing things, they might kick me off the project, Saya pleaded. That much was true. They could always push her off in favor of an alternate candidate. It didn't help that she'd been the slowest of them to adapt to mind-linking. She was also the only one who vomited after each session, which made it all the more surprising that by all viable metrics, she shared the strongest bond with her partner Digimon. Everyone expected that her mind link with Agumon would produce the clearest footage of the digital world to date. What does it say? I don't know, but it feels friendly? Like it's calling my name, or that it's glad I've come back to play, Saya said. All things that were too squishy and metaphorical to properly quantify. But these creatures certainly had intelligence and personalities. It's just like you said, Saya said. Said what? Connecting with Digimon is incredible, and incredibly dangerous. Yeah, like encountering an extraterrestrial. The discovery of Digimon wasn't like the discovery of a new species, really. If anything, Yulin figured it was likely the humans were operating on the incorrect assumption that Digimon intelligence and society were below those of humans. She gave voice to her concern. We think we've discovered the digital world, but what if we're the ones who've been discovered? All the more reason for us to continue our studies. The network already caused our worlds to collide, Saya said, acknowledging Yulin's question. It was like pouring milk into coffee. The two couldn't be separated again. Humanity couldn't simply cut itself off from the network and ignore the digital worlds. My dad thinks you're the most important member of the team, you know, she added with a smile, abruptly changing the subject. Me, not Kosuke? Yulin said, her voice rising in surprise. Nope, he is just a younger version of my dad, and I'm his daughter, so it's hard to separate me from that label. But you make this feel more like an official operation, like a company, Saya said, to a blank stare and silence from Yulin. Here, I'll give you an example. Say we make a mistake, or start heading down the wrong path in our research. You're basically the only one who could stop us. At least that's what I think. Wait, what? What are you talking about? I know it's a lot. It's freezing. I can't believe that vending machine still has cold drinks in it in the dead of winter. Kosuke crouched as he walked up to Yulin and Saya. He handed each of them a hot drink. Yeah, it's chilly. Wind's pretty strong, too. We can head back if you're ready, Yulin offered, hugging her own shoulders and giving a performative shiver. Let's stay just a little longer, Saya said. I'm good either way. It's been a minute since I got to just stand around and zone out, Kosuke noncommittedly concurred. I'll be in the car then, Yulin said, resolutely walking away. She got in, fired up the engine, and turned on the heat. She watched Saya and Kosuke huddled together, looking up at the clear night sky where the moon was the only thing returning their gaze. She rested her hands on the steering wheel and watched them through the windshield. Why did they have to make such a display of everything? Slightly irritated at their showy affection, she pulled out her phone and took a sneaky photo of the two lovebirds. Ryosenji Electronics' TARTARS program was at last ready for its debut in Test Chamber 4. On Professor Ryosenji's orders, the attack team consisting of Yulin, Kosuke, and Saya were to simultaneously mind-link to their Digimon, and Yulin was the captain. Kosuke the engineer and navigator, and Saya the one-woman surveyor team. They boarded a digital observation vessel they dubbed the TARTARS probe, and prepared to begin the first direct observation of the digital world through their partners, Palmon, Tentamon, and Agumon. It was an abject failure. Right. Looks like we could, if I pushed it, make it all the way through Act 3. However, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save this next part given what little bit I saw as I was scrolling down to see basically the size of the chapter. The next one's an important one. And if anyone is watching on the VOD, you saw what I saw. So, we will pick this up next week before things get heavy. Let's see if anyone's available for a raid. Doesn't look like anyone is streaming anything that I would want to watch. I mean, I could raid Asher's House of Cats, but I don't really want to. Oh. I mean, why not? Yeah. I haven't talked to Braver in a while, but... Alright. See y'all soon.